All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's tournament strategy show where we're going to look at last night's slate. We're going to look at today's slate, game plan it up a little bit, and make sure we're all on the same page. Zolo, good to see you, man. Hope all is well. Congrats to you. That was an awesome call on Scottie Pippen last night. I know we talked about it a little bit on the pre-lock show. I believe I said if Luke Kennard was out, he was a little bit more viable, but I wasn't going to force exposure to him. I went out last night, so I didn't have a chance to late swap too much. But that was an awesome call by you, Zolo. Great one. Thomas Dye, hope you're doing all right. Hope all's going well in your world. Let's look at last night's slate. This was the nuts lineup. This is what won the 100K tournament. For me, last night was not great. Again, I didn't late swap, though, and I think it really helped a lot if you did. Fred VanVleet, we're over the field on him. He made a lot of sense last night. John Contra, we're also over the field on. We had plenty of exposure to him, but again, he was another guy who benefited a ton by having Luke Kennard get ruled out. Vince Williams, again, another guy who made sense about Kennard, but he was also just a viable play in general, but I did not get to him. Most people didn't. He's the one guy who was like 5% owned who just did very well. And then Giannis, we did have a 5% min on him, but that was not enough. It looks like Giannis was really the pay-up option you wanted in this gigantic tournament to win 100K. Was a little bit surprised you didn't need Doncic. You didn't really need too many super expensive players. You really just needed Giannis. And then, of course, Şengün was a core play for us. We were significantly over the field there. Monty Morris's ownership fell a good bit as we got more injury news throughout the slate. But I was significantly over the field on him. But he wasn't really a great player or anything. He just made lines work. Bojan Bogdanovic. Again, last night, all the Pistons were fine going up against Charlotte. I wasn't excited about Bogdanovic, but it makes sense he kind of got there. And then Niang was another guy who wasn't great, but he got there at 4K. So interesting night. It's weird. A lot of the pieces that a lot of people are talking about really weren't the guys you needed, but like I know Doncic played, and a lot of people were upset that he played in the blowout a little bit, but I think in single entry it made a lot of sense. And he probably hurt you a lot in single entry, but it's weird when you look at the winning GPPs. Not too much that's super surprising there. But all in all, I think I just needed more Giannis probably and more Vince Williams, which, I don't know, makes sense. Moving on, let's look at today. Interesting slate on deck. There's some spots we can definitely look at to try and get a little bit of leverage on. But as of right now, it's just looking just kind of plain. Just nothing's really looking too shiny. I think we just kind of know what to do here. Win the Millie. Hope you're doing all right, man. Are we going to have some NFL content? Of course. What is that content going to be? I don't know. When NBA kicks off, I'm really not as involved on the NFL side of things. I'm sure Geek, Bobby, and Burns will probably at least have the tactics show tomorrow. I'm in that group chat, and I haven't seen them talk about it yet, but I'm sure they'll talk about it tomorrow. And then, of course, we'll have all the written content. I know we have guys working on the cheat sheets and things of that sort. But video content, I don't know exactly what they're doing, but we'll have more on that tomorrow. Daniel, what's up, man? Hope you're doing all right. Let's jump into this slate. Highest total game on the slate, also the game that we'll see the vast majority of ownership, is this Utah Jazz going up against the Washington Wizards game. When we just look at this projected ownership, very few guys have less than 20% ownership. And it's for a fantastic reason. Oddly enough, the Wizards did play last night, so this is the back end of a back-to-back for them. The spread is only at 7.5 points. Is not bad. It wouldn't shock me if this game does end up blowing out a little bit, just because the Wizards were able to keep it competitive last night against the Timberwolves. I don't know if they can do that 2 games in a row, but I still don't play for blowouts. I think the Jazz are all still in a really good spot. So we'll start off with injury news. And there's none for the Jazz. So this team's healthy. The problem here is that they have a lot of bodies, and the rotation's pretty large. Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton, and Jordan Clarkson are really the 3 guys that I feel the most comfortable with. just because they actually see more than 30 minutes relatively consistently. Uh, yeah, I think Clarkson's the one who sometimes doesn't, but I still feel decent about that. Let me double check Sexton. Yeah. I mean, Sexton's a little bit more consistent with like the upper 20s. His minutes can be a little volatile, but they're still the three I feel the best about in a really soft matchup. Outside of that, I consider these other guys just tier 2 plays from the Jazz. John Collins, again, fantastic matchup against the Wizards. Fine getting exposure to him, but I'm not going to force it. Walker Kessler has tremendous upside. He's in a really, really great spot and great matchup against the Wizards. Again, comfortable having ownership to him. I'm sure I do currently. Yeah, right around 20% exposure. You can look at my exposures currently. I'm eating the chalk on all of the Jazz right now, but these guys are just viable plays. Fontecchio, we know he has upside. Chris Dunn is viable at 3,900. Everyone's just priced with a little bit of upside, which is exactly what you want. No one's like too expensive in a good matchup. So the annoying part is they're just all in the mix. When you look at some of the cheaper options, there's not one player that I get overly excited about just because they all can be a little streaky. But when it comes to just guys I'm looking to prioritize, it's Markkanen, Sexton, and Clarkson. So, like you said, win the Millie, it's a Jazz day, which is fine. Yeah, Sexton and Clarkson, solid plays. Jasmine, what's up? Hope you're doing well. Let's see. And then Chris Dunn and Olynyk are your value plays if we don't get better value on the slate. That's the important thing, is just as we get more news, it's always just important to reevaluate other players you were on from a value perspective. Even when it comes to expensive players too, like sometimes when we get more value, that means we can force a little bit more exposure to some of the studs on the slate. Next up, we have the Washington Wizards, and unfortunately, the Wizards I'm not as excited about. Again, they're on the back end of a back-to-back. They're able to keep the game pretty close yesterday. Daniel Gafford is viable, decent matchup against the Utah Jazz front court, but I still think there's better center plays on this slate than him. Avdia was a little sneaky yesterday. I would have never played Avdia against the Timberwolves, but he had a solid night. But I don't love just the overall matchup. The forwards for Utah have been relatively solid defensively this season against guys like Kuzma and Avdia. Tyus Jones could be interesting at 6,500, but I just think there's better plays on this slate, and most of them are on the Jazz. So, not overly excited about taking too many shots here. But this is the highest game total. Which means I will force exposure to at least one of these guys. Let me look at the sim model right quick and see who I'm missing. Washington. Of course, the sim model likes Jordan Poole. Oh my god. Jordan Poole has just been so bad, man. He's just not. At this point, you start to question if he should just even be in the league. If he is in the league, he just shouldn't be a top option. Scored 12 fantasy points last night and played for 28 minutes. Shot with an 18% field goal percentage is ridiculous. Let's see. Game against Denver was also bad. Those are two good defensive teams. Only scored 24 points against the Spurs. Had a decent game against the Knicks. He does have 50-point upside. We saw that against Indiana. Let me look a little bit closer at just the matchup itself for Poole. Pretty average. League average. I always take a shot on the highest total game. I don't love it, but it's going to be Poole for me. It could be Kuzma if you don't like Poole, but that's just what I'm going to do there. Thoughts on Bagley? Bagley was solid last night. Bagley, decent matchup. I mean, for me, my biggest concern with Bagley is just how many minutes will he play. We've seen him play 30 plus minutes on this team, but that was mostly with Gafford out. Here recently, he's been more so around 17, 26 minutes. Ideally for me with Bagley, Gafford would be out. Or he would be a little bit cheaper around like in the 4K range. So I'm not excited about Bagley in particular at this point. Yeah, I don't hate that. Why not? I missed that chalk his last game. Poole is poop. Yeah, you're not wrong. He's garbage, but I'm okay with playing garbage every now and again. New coach in Washington. Maybe Poole gets a bench role. That'll be interesting to see. If he doesn't start, I'm not going to play him. All right. Let's see here. So moving on, we have another game. The 76ers going up against the Pacers. First thing I'll mention is Joel Embiid obviously had a fantastic game last time out. For me, just in general, when you're playing DFS and there's an obvious play like Joel Embiid, my thought process is, and I think you should always just consider what has to happen for me not to have to play this guy. Ultimately, I did some of that brainstorming. I looked at other options. I'm playing Joel Embiid today. He's still one of the better plays on the slate. He's still not that expensive and a pretty solid matchup against the Pacers. So I'm playing him. I think he's smart. I think at least having around 20% being around field weight is ideal for me. We'll see. Austin, there was a show yesterday. There won't be a show today because I have work stuff. But there was a show yesterday. I think I posted it. I posted it twice in the chat. But I think just people were talking a lot and it might have got lost in the weeds a little bit. What's up, Rodney? All right. Sweet. So, yeah, I think Joel Embiid, a play that I'm just going to eat the chalk on. Don't always love doing that, but it makes a lot of sense here. Big news here is that Harris is questionable. If Tobias Harris, just in case you don't know, if Tobias is out, that makes Maxey a much more viable play. And we'll have some relatively decent options here as well for some potential value options. I think guys like Kelly O at 5,200 could be a bit more viable if Harris is out. Could even take some shots on guys like Batum too. But it wouldn't be like all this value is fantastic. They're just slightly more viable. I want a little bit of exposure. But it would make Maxey more of a priority for me in particular, and I would just feel even better about Joel Embiid. Anything else worth mentioning? Yeah, not really. I think we know who to play from the Sixers for the most part. If everyone plays, I'm just playing Joel. And I might have a little bit of Maxey if it happens naturally. For the Pacers, going up against the Sixers, Tyrese Halliburton is still out. Jalen Smith is questionable, so nothing really new there. We've been in this situation for a while. Siakam had a little... He's still not showing a ton of upside, which is unfortunate. But I'm always just... I feel like he has to have a big game here soon, especially while Halliburton's still out. He's definitely been like their top offensive option. And like he's been a focal point of the offense. He's been very involved. But upside has just not been there. Matchup is solid going up against Batum. Sixers defensively haven't been like a shutdown team or anything like that. Miles Turner has also been struggling. Again, I don't really try to avoid playing guys going up against Embiid, but they do tend to get into foul trouble and things of that sort. So a little bit nervous about that. Wouldn't go too crazy on Turner. Siakam's ownership is just the biggest concern. He's just really chalky for a guy who hasn't shown too much upside. What is he, 7,100? Let's do a little bit of math on that. For him to hit 6x, we need 42 points, and he just hasn't shown that upside since the trade. Yeah, I'm just not as excited about the Pacers as I wish I could be. If Jalen Smith gets ruled out, then I will play Siakam, and I'll just match the field on him. But if Smith plays, if I get a little bit naturally, I'm okay with it, but he's not a priority for me. That might be an unpopular opinion, but it's just how I feel. Yeah, it's weird. Like Siakam's been looking solid. He hasn't looked bad at all. It's just, you know, it's just he hasn't been showing the upside. So anyway, we're just gonna move on from there. Oh, Zolo, is that official? He's out. I guess I missed the update. Oh, okay. He is questionable. Good. Good. Uh let's see. Moving on. Timberwolves played last night. That does make me a little bit nervous. Back to backs. Typically, I'm not looking to force exposure to guys like this, but I feel like I kind of have to. With no one else taking shots on guys who have just been in good form this season and they're low owned. And for me, that's the way I like to play. Like, I'm not having a good night if my leverage plays don't go off. Like, there's always obvious plays, but I like taking shots on these low owned guys. Anthony Edwards was the guy last night. He has a little bit of a tougher matchup today going up against Bridges. Cat, we know this Nets front court has been struggling for a while. And so I do like him here at 8,200. Let me see if the sim model likes him, though. Probably not. Let's see here. Yeah, sim model likes him a good bit. I mean, obviously, Anthony Edwards is a viable option here as well. We saw what he did last night, but ultimately, I'm going to take a stand here on Karl Anthony Towns. He'll more than likely be a leverage play for me unless we get some sort of crazy injury news. Mike Conley is questionable once again. We know what happens there at this point. If, again, this is on the back end of a back-to-back, if there is some sort of random injury news that comes up, this team could be way more interesting to play. Would love for that to happen, but as things stand right now, it's really just Cat that I'm going to force exposure to. And then everyone else, we'll see what the DS wants to do. Let's see. Oh, appreciate that, Daniel, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, you're right, Rodney. Like it's hard to take shots on anyone outside of Embiid. It really is just more GPP focused. Embiid's the obvious, clear play. If you're looking for some tournament upside, that's when you look at some of the other guys. Dave said, "Hit." Appreciate you, man. If you all could hit the like, share, and subscribe button, it definitely does help the channel a lot. Appreciate you guys. Yeah, Thomas, I could see that. Like he has a solid floor for sure. Definitely has been hitting that high 20s, low 30s range at a pretty solid price tag. But you know me, I don't play that way. But I do. He is going to have a strong game at some point. I'm just doesn't feel like today at high ownership. Yeah, that's worth mentioning too. Lowest game total on the slate. So that's also a reason why I'm not trying to force too much exposure to it. That's also why all of these guys are super low owned, even though the Nets are seeing ownership, which is kind of weird. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, Zolo, Bridges has been solid. I mean, the weird thing though, let me look a little bit closer at his performances. Yeah, he's been decent. Like his floor has been around 30, 35. Which is this season it's been way lower than that. But this month he's just been solid, solid. He's shown 45, 50-point upside, even in tough matchups. And that's what is frustrating for me as like a DFS player and all of us is just it hasn't really been matchup driven. He's just going off even in tough spots. Let's see today for him. Looking at the Nets. Decent matchup. Going up against Anthony Edwards. Edwards has struggled against forwards, versatile forwards, so not the worst spot for him. I'll double check the sim. Bridges has a little bit of upside, not standing out as like a must play or anything like that, like some of the other guys on this slate later do. But yeah, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna force exposure to the Nets tonight. That's just not a plan for me. Any of them. If I get a little bit naturally, again, that's fine, but I'm just not going to force the issue. Yeah, that wouldn't shock me, Zolo. It wouldn't shock me. So, moving on, we have the Nuggets going up against the Knicks. Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be fun to see. For the Nuggets going up against the Knicks, tough matchup. This Knicks team has been the best defense in the league ever since they got OG. And it's weird because we see the ownership on Embiid. Typically, GPP wise, you would think obviously Jokic at 3% ownership and cheaper, he is the play tonight. But he has a tough matchup going up against the Knicks team who's been really good defensively, even against centers. So the contrarian in me is like play Jokic, but I can't think of any other reason to play him besides being a contrarian, which is not usually the way I play. I need a little bit of logic behind it. So I'm not going to take that shot. I don't think it's stupid to. I just can't find a good reason for it. Let's see. Any of the other Nuggets standing out? Yeah, it's really just Jokic is the only guy I would look at here. This Knicks team has been good, but this is still a pretty low total game, so not one I'm trying to force too much exposure to. Obviously, Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson are viable plays. I usually just like playing them in extremely soft matchups, but these are two guys who, in my opinion, have been in pretty solid form. I know Brunson disappointed a little bit in that Nets game, and Randall's just been pretty consistent lately. He's had 2 50-point games back to back. So definitely viable. Let me look a little bit closer at their matchups. But I think it's just another team I'm not planning on forcing exposure to tonight. Like I said, like the plays in like Lauri Markkanen and Joel Embiid are just so clear and obvious, and some of the other ones as we get towards the later games, hard for me to get overly excited about these low total games. So again, I'm okay if you get like 5-10% exposure to Randall and Brunson. I prefer Randall over Brunson tonight if you're taking a shot on one of them, but ultimately I'm not overly excited about it. Outside of the two obvious studs, Hartenstein is questionable once again. We saw what happened last go around. Precious Achiuwa didn't start. It was Jericho Sims. Jericho Sims had a really hot start with quite a few blocks. He played for about 27 minutes, and then Precious Achiuwa closed the game and also saw around 20 minutes or so. I can get the exact number. Saw 21 minutes. So not great for his price tag. You want to see a little bit more than that. So again, not overly excited about anyone here. Even if Jericho Sims starts, I don't love him as a play. Like I said, he got really hot early with those blocks last go around. I don't expect that to happen again. So just not a great game. I'm okay with one-off shots, but not a area I'm looking at right now. The trend continues for the Celtics as long as everyone's going to play. None of them are really standing out for me too much right now, and it does look like everyone's going to play tonight. So Tatum, we know he has slate breaking upside, but we also have Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, Sabonis all on this slate as well. Even guys like Fox too. He's just not the stud that I'm going to pay up for tonight. He is extremely low owned, so I'm not sure if I'm going to 150 max or 20 max or even just play single entry tonight. It would just depend what happens with work and stuff like that. But if I 150 max, I think it's obvious. You put a 5% min on Tatum, you move on. 20 max, I just don't think it'll be as necessary. Single entry, I won't get here at all. So not overly excited about the Celtics either. It's been a little bit of a trend. So yeah, unless something changes injury-wise. I hope so, man. I hope so. Zolo said the Celtics versus Heat game is sneaky. It's one of the rivalry week games, so it'll be competitive. Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely can take your shot on Tatum. Again, it wouldn't shock me if he breaks the slate. Let me look a little bit closer at the matchups and just make sure I'm not missing anything there. Yeah, I'm just not excited about it. I mean, Tatum and I'm not going to play Brown, but I don't think he's a crazy shot if you think this game does stay close. The Heat going up against the Celtics. I'll look a little bit closer at the matchup, but once again, I just don't love these guys. I mean, Hero has a okay spot. He is only 6,800. Looks like he is projecting pretty well. Um, did only score 29 points in that last game. With everyone like Terry Rozier coming, no one really performed very well against Memphis, which was pretty disappointing. Bam, of course, did his thing, but I think you would expect that. So I think Hero's fine. He's looking like the chalkier option here. So even then, I'm not super excited about it, but just not feeling great about it. Bam is okay too. He's just been in good form, but not pumped. Hero looks good at the price, but Brown made Luka look foolish last night. So Hero better bring his A game or it's game over. Yeah, for me, like Hero feels like more of a dart throw play that I would be open to if he was super low owned. At this point, let me see if he's showing up at all in any of my early runs. Yeah, he's not. So I doubt he will later. But if he showed up naturally, I wouldn't X him out or anything, but I'm not going to force him. Yeah, it doesn't shock me. I could see that, Zolo. He's fine. I'm just not going to force him personally. Next up, we have the second highest total game on the slate. Finally, things are starting to look a little bit brighter. We have the Kings going up against the Warriors, and for the Kings tonight, pretty healthy. Nothing really changing from like an injury news standpoint here. But my guy Sabonis has been in fantastic form lately. The matchup going up against the Warriors is solid. Like you can pick on their front court. Kevin Looney struggled a little bit against bigs like Sabonis, so I am totally fine playing Sabonis tonight. The issue is he's just chalky. He's going to be 20% owned tonight, if not higher. So it's not a sneaky play, not someone like I usually like to try and target those sneaky guys who I think no one else is on. And that's just not the case here. So Sabonis is an obviously good play. Everyone will be playing him, and I'll be a part of that group as well. Malik Monk is projecting very well. Looks like he'll also be very chalky. Again, this is the highest game total on the slate, so I'm not trying to run away from it. I'm totally comfortable playing Malik Monk in this spot. I did mention Poole. I'll be playing him tonight, so he's kind of like my pivot option. That sounds so bad, but he is like my pivot option off of the Monk chalk, but I'll also have plenty of Monk tonight as well. Keegan Murray is another guy who's still relatively cheap at 6,100, but he's low owned in a really nice high total game with a close spread. He's one of those guys who can be a bit of a streaky shooter, but I put him a little bit above that category in my mind personally these days. And then I'm kind of off the De'Aaron Fox train. He definitely has upside, but the Warriors haven't been giving up too many fantasy points to point guards this season, so I'm not going to try and chase him here. We do see that. We've seen that happen before in the past, so it's not crazy at all, Zolo, to take a shot on a low-owned Fox in a high total game. If I was 150 maxing, I'll be totally fine with like a 5% min, but I'm okay with it here. Yeah, Sabonis has struggled against the Warriors historically. He's chalky, so if you want to buy into that historical narrative, you definitely can fade him here. Again, like if there's chalky players, you can always make a case for fading. It's fine. Even if I'm playing someone, totally fine to fade him. Like I'm always fine with that approach. But ultimately, I'm playing Sabonis tonight. I'm not going to fade him. And so, yeah, I like the Kings tonight. Sabonis, Murray, Monk are all priorities for me on this slate. Yeah, that's true too. It's definitely possible Draymond could sit on the back end of a back-to-back. We'll have to wait and see if he shows up on the injury report. As of right now, he's not there, but we'll see. The Warriors, I always say this, they're one of my least favorite teams to talk about. Of course, Chris Paul is out, but he's been out for a little bit now. You can look at Steph, but like I keep saying, same situation with Tatum. I think there's better pay up options today. So not really excited about him or anyone else here. Kuminga did have a strong performance last time out. I'm gonna look a little bit closer at these matchups and see if there's anything that stands out there. Yeah, Sabonis has allowed a decent amount of points to post bigs. So if Looney starts again, assuming he would, not the craziest play by any means, but I don't think I want to go there. His minutes are not great. Kuminga, assuming he will. He's been playing pretty solid minutes here lately. Kuminga actually has been really good. And he's only 5.8 tonight. Let's see what the sim thinks about him. Yeah, sim likes him too. I like Kuminga. He didn't really stand out for me too much when I was just doing my initial research. But being in the highest total game, I think it makes sense to force exposure. Not highest total, second highest total game. And close spread. I think it makes sense to go back here. His minutes have been very consistent. Curry, again, I'll be okay with like a 5% min if I was 150 maxing, but outside of that, I don't think he's a necessity, which is sad. I love Steph. Last game on the slate, we have the Bulls going up against the Lakers. For the Bulls, no real injury news here worth mentioning, but these guys are standing out a lot, but we're also seeing high ownership here. Nikola Vucevic is a priority for me. I don't think I have to explain it too much. I've been playing Vuce a lot this season. Matchup against the Lakers for versatile bigs the stats aren't as great as you would think. They've allowed the 24th most points to versatile bigs this season, so they haven't been giving up a ton of points to these type of bigs, but I still think it's a good spot for a guy like Vucevic. He's had strong performances against the Lakers, but also just outside of that, I like his price tag and his upside, so I'm okay attacking with him here. I also am always more open to playing Kobe White when Zach LaVine is out. We got that right earlier this week, I believe, and so happy to go right back to it. And then DeMar DeRozan is just simply too cheap. First of all, we know he's from LA. Everyone knows he's from LA. Everyone thought he was going to get traded there. But he's also just stupid cheap at 7,400. In my opinion, he's one of the better plays on this slate, if not the best play, if you're not taking into consideration Joel Embiid. So yeah, I really love the Bulls here. And then you even have value options in guys like Caruso, Ayo, Patrick Williams, who are seeing consistent minutes at this point. And at their price tag, that makes them very viable. So I like them. Let's see here. Yeah, that's definitely an approach, Chris. I probably won't lock them, but I get the sentiment. Wiggins and Green last night due to not knowing what the rotation would look like. Yeah. And the thing is, too, they change their rotation all the time. So whenever you think you know what it is, you don't. You don't. Ronnie said, what happened to Jackson Davis? It's the Warriors. They change their rotation all the time. And their players go invisible all the time. When it comes to certain teams, I've come to accept that there just won't always be logic, you know? I'm sure it is for Kerr and the rest of the guys, but I just don't see it. Yep, agreed, Zolo. Gross play on the Bulls, Drummond. I don't see it unless you see this game. I mean, I don't even know if Drummond sees too much run and blowouts. How's he been? I didn't even realize against Memphis, he played 18 minutes and scored 38 points. That's hilarious. That's crazy efficiency. Yeah, I mean, I don't love it, to be honest, Zolo. I would try to not do that personally. But you could definitely do worse. And then for Lakers, the usual, these guys are questionable, LeBron and AD. We did see LeBron miss last game, so I guess there's a slightly more chance or more likelihood that LeBron James doesn't play today. We know what to do if that happens. All of the Lakers become core plays. They're still pretty cheap too, so I'll be willing to go right back to all of them. But as of right now, I'm assuming they're all going to play. So not as excited about some of these pieces. But Anthony Davis at 10,200, 10% ownership is looking like a potential leverage play for me on this slate when everyone's playing Joel Embiid, Lauri Markkanen, and Nikola Vucevic. I definitely want to make sure I have some AD. He disappointed a lot of people last time out, and you all know I like to go right back to those kind of situations too. The matchup itself isn't bad. I mean, actually, it's not great. Vucevic has been decent against versatile bigs like AD this season. They're ranked 23rd in points given to versatile bigs. I know AD did score 50 points against these guys earlier this season. So we know the upside is definitely there, but we do want a bit more than 50, probably around like 61. Would love a 66, 70 point performance, but like I said, I'll be over the field on AD today. So interesting slate. There's some really gross games where I think we can have some one-off targets here, but I don't want to go too crazy on. And it looks like the field, at least as of right now, is on some of the best plays on the slate. So usually I get excited about slates where there's low owned guys that I think are going overlooked. Slates like this are fine, but hopefully we get some value and we see some ownership start to move around. That's when I'll get a little bit more pumped. I won't be on the pre-lock show today. I have a meeting at work. But then I'll be back tomorrow for both shows per usual. This one at 12:30 and the pre-lock show at 5:30 p.m. So as always, appreciate you all. Hope you all have a great night. Wish you all nothing but the best. And I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out, guys.